Today, we become legends.
Will Smite 2 succeed? It's a question that's on everyone's mind at the moment. Sadly, I'm no oracle and can't predict the future, but let's talk about what Smite 2 needs to do in order to cement itself within the MOBA genre, just as Smite did way back in 2014. Firstly, let's define what success means for Smite 2. I'm sure we'd all love if the game came out and immediately converted half the player base of League and Dota and became the most popular MOBA of all time, but we live in reality and Smite 2 is neither capable of that nor needs to do it in my opinion to be successful. I would define Smite 2 as a success in two different scenarios. One, it cements itself at higher player counts than Smite 1, or two, it doesn't consistently lose players over time like Smite 1 does. To achieve either of these outcomes, the game has to appeal to a new audience in some way, or at the very least give returning old Smite players a reason to stick around. If all Smite 2 does is convert all the existing Smite 1 players over to it, then it will just have the exact same demographics and declining player base problem that Smite 1 has had for years. We've already seen some quite promising signs in this department, with a lot of buzz around the game even outside the small circles of Smite 1 players. Popular YouTubers like Big Fry TV and Asmongold have covered the game. Of course this was a controversy as is tradition, but in my opinion, and in theirs as well, the controversy is massively overblown and doesn't actually impact the core gameplay or idea of Smite 2. And since we're talking about new players here, they obviously don't care whether legacy skins don't transfer from Smite 1. Even if it did though, getting the game's name out there via these creators with hundreds of thousands or even millions of subscribers is something we basically never saw with Smite 1 except in its very early years. Smite 1 had a similar phenomenon in its launch years and it really helped the game reach a larger audience and build a foundational player base that would stick with the game for a long time, myself included. So seeing this kind of buzz around Smite 2, even if technically negative, is good to see. However, attracting new players is one thing, being able to keep them is a whole different beast. Smite 1 has historically had a really hard time keeping players invested early on in their Smite journey. Sure, once you've got the hang of the game and have maybe 50 to 100 hours under your belt, there's a decent chance you'll become a time whale like myself with 4,000 hours or even more in the game. But it seems many of the over 40 million accounts Smite 1 has have just not got past that initial hump and quit the game very early. I do think Smite 2 is fairly well positioned to capture new players though. It's a fresh start with a smaller roster of characters, plenty of core systems changes like items and power types that will even out the knowledge curve a little bit between existing Smite 1 players and completely new Smite 2 players. The game of course just looks, sounds and feels so much better than Smite 1 ever did, which is extremely important in terms of leaving a good first impression and getting potential players over that first biggest obstacle of even installing the game in the first place, allowing them to discover the magic that is Smite's combat and depth. Letting the pro scene grow organically is also a really smart move in my opinion. This is how most esports grow, and I think starting the game off with a salaried league like Smite 1 had for many years would stifle competition in the early days, and make it not feel like anyone with the skills required can have a shot at going pro. All that said though, we aren't exactly in a MOBA renaissance, at least not yet. All MOBAs, not just Smite, have been on a slow, painful decline since roughly 2014 through 2016, and there are many examples of new MOBAs, even ones with strong existing IPs behind them, failing to get a strong launch or slowly dying out in recent years. Just look at Heroes of the Storm, Predecessor, Overprime, even Pokemon Unite to a certain extent. It's not really an environment where anyone can release a MOBA and have it do well. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's not a new genre, and anyone that is actually invested in a MOBA is heavily invested in it. It will be hard to poach players from the likes of Dota and League. Hi-Rez really have an uphill battle ahead of them with this launch if they want Smite 2 to be truly successful. But that brings me back to what I said at the start of the video. I don't think Smite 2 can or needs to be the most successful MOBA launch of all time to be considered a success. With the way the game's shaping up at the moment, I think it has a great chance of carrying Smite 1's legacy into a new generation of gaming, and even if it only reaches Smite 1's level of success, I would still consider that a successful launch overall, given the core game comes with so many essential improvements to bring the Smite franchise into this decade. But what do you think? Will Smite 2 be a resounding success, a massive failure, or something in between? Let me know down below, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.